Should you do an armpit detox? Does antiperspirant cause health problems? Is whole body deodorant safe to use? All that and more on this episode of the Healthiest You. Sweat. It's normal, but sometimes inconvenient. Sweaty hands, pit stains, or even worse, stress sweat can be uncomfortable to deal with. And if you're rushing to get out the door, chances are you may have even forgotten to put on some deodorant. That has happened to me more times than I'd like to admit. We are focusing on women's health and wellness on the Healthiest You podcast. Whether you're on your way to work or enjoying a cup of coffee, take this time to focus on your health. Hopefully you remembered your deodorant today, but no worries if you forgot. We have some tips and tricks for when that happens. Here to talk about sweat from your armpits to your toes is Dr. Neha Kaushik, family medicine physician with Lehigh Valley Health Network. Dr. Kaushik, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So what is the difference between deodorant and antiperspirant?
So the difference between antiperspirant and deodorant is that an antiperspirant's primary goal is to reduce sweating. And it does so by using the aluminum-containing compounds to block the sweat glands at the pores. And in this way, it reduces the sweating. Deodorants, on the other hand, are really meant for two reasons. One is for fragrance, to add a nice scent. And two, it has antibacterial properties because it is alcohol-based. And that actually gets rid of the bacteria. So that helps reduce the odor. So the main goal with deodorants is to reduce the odor, whereas with antiperspirants is to reduce the sweating.
Okay, so antiperspirant is stopping the sweat, whereas deodorant is more so masking the odor, but still allowing you to perspire.
Exactly.
All right. Mm-hmm. Now, like many women, I reach for the clinical strength antiperspirant, especially if I have a stressful day ahead of me or maybe a special event. Is the aluminum in antiperspirant harmful to your health? Because there are a lot of rumors out there that it can cause some very serious problems.
So the aluminum component is not harmful. And in fact, the amount that we absorb through our skin when we use an antiperspirant is so minimal that it's really not known to cause any harm. We absorb about 0.01%, if anything, through our antiperspirant. So there really is no harm with using aluminum-containing products that has been identified.
Well, then I guess I don't have to be afraid to use my clinical strength because I always have this little bit of fear in the back of my mind, like, ooh, is this not good? Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any ingredients women should avoid when choosing a deodorant or an antiperspirant?
So it is important to look at the ingredients that a deodorant carries by looking at by reading the label. It's important to identify the components that a deodorant is made up of. Most of the time, the deodorant contains an alcohol-based substance that is responsible for killing the bacteria. In addition, you'll also find fragrances. It's important to identify that there's no allergic reaction that one may have to those fragrances. Those with conditions such as eczema or psoriasis may want to be more careful when using deodorants to make sure they're not allergic to any of those substances.
That makes sense. For me personally, I try to avoid anything with fragrance. I always go for the fragrance free just because I feel like it's the safest option.
Right. If you can, I go for a deodorant that is considered natural. Those tend to have less reactions in the body. So those, if someone prefers to be fragrant free, those are the ones to go for.
Sometimes though, it smells like my deodorant just isn't working. Mm. Can your body actually become immune to your deodorant?
No, your body cannot become immune to deodorant. There may be some other causes that the deodorant doesn't seem like it's working, but we cannot become immune to the deodorant itself.
Okay, so consider the underlying causes that may be going on.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
There are some other causes that might also impact that. For example, the foods we eat are known to increase. Some of the food we eat can impact the sweat in our body. Genetics may also play a role. Alcohol can also play a role, as well as red meats. These are some food products that are known to increase sweat. So these are things to consider when noticing if the deodorant is not working effectively.
Interesting. Now, what about deodorant layering? I think it's helpful to use 2 deodorants to keep the BO at bay, but that's just my 2 cents.
Right. So 2-layer deodorant is actually a very good idea. Ideally, you want to use a deodorant that is combined with an antiperspirant, so 2-in-1. And it's important to use a combination of these starting usually at nighttime. The reason is, because the reason is that the antiperspirant, you want to use that part at nighttime when your armpits are dry. That's when the sweat glands are relaxed. You're less likely to be sweating, so the pores are more open. And so antiperspirants can work better at that time. Applying 1 layer at that time, and then applying a 2nd layer in the morning to create the fragrance aspect from the deodorant part is more effective. So the 2-layer deodorant is something I absolutely recommend. What you want to keep in mind is making sure your armpits are dry when applying. So make sure the armpits are not wet. So if you're coming out of a shower, make sure you're patting your armpits dry and then applying.
So you mean I've been applying my deodorant wrong my entire life? Because I apply it first thing in the morning and I should be applying it at night, the antiperspirant, and then the deodorant in the morning.
Well, I would say the antiperspirant works best on dry armpits.
Okay.
So if as long as you can make sure that you are patting your arms dry from a shower, then it should still be effective.
All right.
But it's most likely best to use at nighttime so it has time to dry up overnight.
That is fascinating. So there's so many options when it comes to natural deodorant. What exactly makes a deodorant natural or clean?
Yeah, so there's 3 components that make up a natural deodorant. One is to use a fragrance component. That will be through essential oils. That is to create the fragrance. Second is to use a moisturizing component. That is usually consisting of something like baking soda or cornstarch or arrowroot powder. And the third component is a disinfectant piece, which is usually a coconut oil or tea tree oil, which contain antibacterial properties that reduce bacteria.
I love tea tree oil. It's
Me
really
too.
nice. It's even good for like bug spray too. Great ingredient. So how do you find the right deodorant that actually is going to work for your pits?
It's important to do a patch test when choosing the right deodorant. This is conducted through applying a small portion of the deodorant onto your forearm to make sure that you're not having an allergic reaction to any of the ingredients. Once you find that, it's important to look at those 3 components, that it has a fragrance, has a disinfectant, antibacterial piece, and it has moisture-reducing components such as baking soda.
Okay. You mentioned that trial and error. I feel like I'm still in that chapter. Like I have yet to find a deodorant that I love. That's why I'm always changing. Like every 3 months, I'm like, oh, I'll try this brand or I'll try that. Do you have any personal favorites?
I personally like Dove. It has a great fragrance. I actually personally prefer a combination of antiperspirant with the deodorant. So I'll usually go for like a Dove extra strength.
I'll have to give that one a try.
It works great.
What about DIY deodorants? There's homemade recipes online that include natural ingredients such as arrowroot powder or baking soda, which we briefly touched on. Have you tried any of these DIY recipes and do you recommend it?
So I have not tried any of these, but there's a lot of information available. And there's a lot of recipes out there that one can certainly try if they're looking to go the natural route. So the number one thing is to make sure that, again, you're not having allergies to any of the components. And there's different recipes out there. For example, one can mix baking soda with arrowroot powder. You can also mix baking soda with coconut oil, as well as arrowroot powder. This provides the 3 combinations we talked about: the fragrance, the antibacterial, as well as the moisture absorbing component.
That's a nice, simple recipe. And I think something that would be good to try. See if it works. Yeah,
it's definitely worth trying. You know, each individual is different. So it's a lot of trial and error, but it's worth trying. There's no known studies that showed there's any harm with using this.
I've also heard of crystal or mineral stone deodorants. It's a mineral stick that you run underwater before applying. How exactly does this work and is it effective?
Yeah, so mineral stick is actually another example of a natural deodorant that one can try. It actually consists of the salt potassium alum, and what it has is antibacterial properties. So the way it works is by reducing the bacterial load under our armpits. So it reduces the bacteria that are responsible for making the odor. So the nice thing about mineral deodorants are that they're very cheap. So if you're cost-wise, that is one benefit. It's you want to apply it when it's wet and roll it gently under your armpit, and that creates a salt film that protects the armpit and keeps the bacteria away.
And it's a nice, inexpensive option. Because, I mean, if you look when you go shopping at like CVS or any drugstore, some of the deodorants can get quite pricey. Like we're talking $15 for a stick of deodorant.
Exactly. So mineral oil is a good option for someone for low cost of a natural choice.
Great tip. Mm-hmm. The worst part, though, about switching to natural deodorant is the defunking period. It's not cute. Are there any ways to make this transition maybe stink a little less?
Right. So the first thing to keep in mind is to understand that sweating is a natural process, and it is good for our bodies to sweat. It allows us to regulate our temperature. So it's a survival mechanism that our bodies have instilled. So recognizing that when anyone is going from changing deodorants, they may find that they are sweating more than usual because they're taking away the antiperspirant aspect,
right?
Which is they're no longer using the aluminum component to block the sweat glands. So one might experience more sweating. Usually it takes about a month for our body to adjust to that change, going from an antiperspirant to a natural deodorant. During that time, there's many remedies out there that may be effective and they're worth trying. Again, as long as there's no allergies to the components. For example, one can use apple cider vinegar, which has antibacterial properties, so it keeps the bacteria away. One can also just use a natural fragrance to perfume, such as perfume, to create some fragrance. One can also use lemon juice, which creates the acidic environment so the bacteria stay away. There's also some masks, such as bentonite clays. Those can bind to some of the metals and oils under our armpits, and that can also be effective.
So an armpit detox may actually help with the defunking period.
There's been no studies done to show if these detoxes work effectively, but they are worth trying if one wants to go the natural route and see if it works for one. The main thing to keep in mind is to ensure that you don't have an allergy to any of the ingredients that you plan to use, and using a patch test.
Always go back to that patch test just so you don't end up with some sort of allergic reaction or rash.
Exactly.
Because nobody wants to deal with an itchy rash.
Exactly.
So these pit masks, these underarm scrubs, have you tried any of them? I am very tempted to buy one, especially because, like I said, the defunking period, it's not a great time.
So I've personally not tried them. But again, I think it's something that one can try if they're interested, and try at your own caution. No studies have demonstrated any benefit that they work effectively, but there's, again, been no studies to demonstrate that they don't work. So these are all natural techniques one can use if they're interested in going the natural route.
So it may be worth giving a try.
Okay.
So science suggests that it may be more effective to apply deodorant before bed because sweat glands are less active and able to better absorb. You alluded to earlier something about applying the antiperspirant before bed. So is that true? We should actually be applying before we go to bed and then just freshening up in the morning, as long as everything's dried and we're showered and everything's good.
That is the most effective way to use the antiperspirant, because you really want to make sure your armpits are dry, as that's when the sweat glands are least active. The pores are more open, so the aluminum component can get down to the pores effectively when the sweat glands are more open and less active. So that is absolutely a technique I recommend, starting at nighttime and then layering on one more time in the morning.
Interesting. I literally have been doing this wrong my entire life.
Well, me too, until I realized there's this two-layer approach that works best.
So we should stick to that deodorant layering.
That's right.
Okay, why is it that one armpit sometimes reeks And the other one smells like roses. What exactly is going on under there?
Yeah, so that could be happening for many reasons. It could be because the arm that smells more, it could be that we're using that arm more. So more sweat glands are incorporated into sweating.
It's usually my right arm.
And mine too.
Makes a lot of sense.
The other thing is different factors affect our sweating. So it's important to look at what else is going on around us and within us. For example, are we on any medications that may be causing increased sweating? Genetics also plays a role. If someone has anxiety, they are more likely to sweat. If there are other stressors that are going on, stress hormones can be released, and that may be causing more sweating under one armpit compared to the other. There may be more bacteria on one side compared to the other. Also, it's important to make sure we're shaving appropriately because the hair under armpits do carry bacteria, and that's responsible for the odor making. So making sure the arm that's reeking is not having extra hair that might be contributing to the cause.
So making sure to give equal attention to both of the underarms.
Absolutely.
It's a wise decision.
Yes. Tender love and care for both sides.
I love it. Now let's talk about a trend that's on TikTok right now, using glycolic acid as deodorant. What exactly is glycolic acid, and is it effective and even safe to use on your underarms?
So glycolic acid is an alcohol-based product. And what it does, it creates acidic environment under the armpits. So bacteria don't like the acidity. And that's how we keep the bacteria away. They can be effective. Although however, there have been really no studies to show how effective they have been. It is a good natural remedy to try. The main thing to keep in mind is that it may create irritation under the arms. So making sure that we don't have skin irritation is an important factor to consider when choosing glycolic acid.
So again, going back to that patch test, really important.
Exactly. Trying that on every ingredient that we choose to use on our bodies.
Let's talk about the dreaded moment after you leave the house and you realize, I've forgotten to put deodorant on. If you can make a quick pit stop at the store, that's great. But what if you don't have the time? What should you do?
Right. So that has happened many times to me.
Me too.
And there's quite a few things we can do to combat that issue. So just using a good old antibacterial soap can be quite effective to get rid of the sweat and the bacteria. We can also use alcohol wipes.
That's usually what I reach for, either like my little Thieves hand sanitizer that I have, which has essential oils in, so it gives a little fragrance, nice. Or like an antibacterial wipe. And if you're really desperate and I don't have either of those on me, which usually is not the case because again, germaphobe, then using the soap in the bathroom.
Right. You can use the soap. You can also just use perfume if you're looking to create a good fragrance.
Okay, so is it true that what you eat can affect how your sweat smells? So if you eat a lot of sulfur-rich foods such as cabbage, broccoli, or red meat, your sweat might start smelling a little funky like rotten eggs. And maybe not just your sweat, but some other things might start smelling a little funky.
Yeah, so that is true, actually. So sulfur-containing food products are known to worsen sweat, the scent of our sweat. And the reason for that is because these food products that have increased sulfur components, like you mentioned, the cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, red meats, these food products contain sulfur. And when that's digested, that may be released as well through our sweat. And they do smell like rotten eggs. So that actually creates that unpleasant odor.
Yeah.
So one can try to mitigate the scent by avoiding or cutting down on these food products if that's heavy in their diet.
Oh, but I love vegetables.
Me too. Yes. There are some alternatives to consider, such as citrus fruits, yogurt. These are some good alternatives.
Love those. Good probiotics in yogurt.
Right, exactly. To reduce the scent that can be noticeable with sulfur-rich foods.
Okay, good tips. How about drinks? So alcohol, caffeine. How can that affect how much you sweat?
Yeah, so alcohol and caffeinated beverages such as coffee, sodas can increase our sweating. They're not responsible for the odor that we may experience, but what alcohol does, for example, is it dilates our blood vessels. So it allows sweating to occur more frequently. So that's how alcohol affects our sweating, increases our sweating. Caffeinated beverages are stimulants. So our body has a higher heart rate, and automatically the sympathetic nervous system starts sweating more as a result. So caffeinated beverages and alcohol can increase our sweating.
Oh, okay. All right. So we can still enjoy a beverage. We may not stink. We just might be a little moist.
Exactly. Yes. Well said.
Aside from food and drinks, how do hormonal changes that occur throughout a woman's life impact sweat and odor?
So hormones can impact us greatly in the amount of sweat we have throughout various times in our life. So there's 4 main times that our sweat is bound to change. 1 is during puberty, when there's increased estrogen. 2 is during our menstrual cycles, when we have a fluctuation of our hormones. 3rd time is during pregnancy, when we have an increase in progesterone and estrogen. Progesterone actually acts like a stimulant, so again, increasing sweating. And the 4th time is during menopause.
It's never fun.
It's never fun. Yeah.
If it's not happening in one phase, it's happening in another.
Right. You can never get rid of it.
Also, another thing that we can never get rid of, stress sweat. It's a real thing that many women struggle with. Why is the odor so bad?
So there are 2 types of sweat glands. One are the eccrine glands. Those are located on the palms of our hands, the soles of our feet, on our face, and they have direct contact into the skin to create the sweat. That sweat consists of proteins and lipids that the bacteria love to feast on. There's another set of sweat glands that are in the armpits and the groin, and they tend to have a richer amount of protein and lipids. And the bacteria really enjoy feasting on the sweat, and that creates the odor.
Ugh.
So the stress sweat that we experience is due to the apocrine glands in the armpits and the groin area secreting sweat that have higher amounts of protein and lipids. And the bacteria love feasting on this, and that's actually what's responsible for the odor and the scent.
I personally really struggle with stress sweat, and it's something that I'm self-conscious about. So what are some ways that we can manage stress sweat?
Sure. So it's important to understand where the stress sweat is coming from. So it's always important to evaluate if there are stressors in our life, if there are new medications that may be causing it. Is it anxiety driven? Is it food related? Alcohol beverages, are they playing a role? Are there caffeinated beverages that may be playing a role? So some ways to manage stress sweat are antiperspirants that, again, have the aluminum-based compounds that will block the sweating from the glands. You can also use sweat pads that are used under the shirt to absorb the sweat. And you can also use undershirts with sweat protection. There's some other ways to deal with stress sweat, such as one study came out saying that chewing gum can reduce stress. So that is one option. It's also important to reduce our stress by listening to music, meditation. Those are some techniques that can also help reduce stress.
I guess I should keep gum on me too, in addition to the hand sanitizer,
Yes.
to lower my stress levels, which will help lower the stress sweat, hopefully.
Right.
Okay.
You could certainly try it.
Now, why might your armpits still stink even after an everything shower? So we've exfoliated, shaved, body wash, all the things. Why does it still stink under there?
Right. So sometimes it could just be that although we did an everything shower, we just didn't do as good of a job as we thought we did. So there's still some lingering bacteria. The other reasons could be that, again, looking at the hair underneath our armpits, they carry a lot of bacteria. The hair follicles carry a lot of bacteria, carry a lot of debris that may be contributing to the odor. So although the everything shower is quite intensive, it is possible that there may be other things to consider when you're noticing the sweating. For example, the hair underneath our armpits, not cleansing ourselves enough. It's also possible that there are medical conditions that can make a person sweat. So considering that, if even after an everything shower, a person is sweating excessively, it's important to consider medical reasons that may cause one to sweat, despite using everything shower.
So really assessing all the different possibilities that could be a reason as to why you're still sweating so much and it still stinks under there.
Right. Yes.
You had mentioned earlier apple cider vinegar.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard of using it as a hair rinse, and you had brought up something along the lines of using it during that defunking period when we're transitioning to using a natural deodorant. So can you talk a bit about that? Like, is that something we should just put in a spray bottle and spritz it under there, like maybe once a day to help with that odor and sweat control?
Mm-hmm. So apple cider vinegar contains an acidic product, and what it does is it actually lowers the acidity in our skin under the armpits, and bacteria don't like that environment. So that's the way it works, and it is quite effective. It has antibacterial properties as well as antifungal properties, so it's a great option to consider for a deodorant.
Okay, so I guess when I'm in the shower now, I'll spritz some in my hair and spritz some into my underarms too.
Yeah.
Some days I feel like my armpits are pools, but ones that I just don't want to swim in all day, uncomfortably soaking in sweat. How much sweat is too much? When is it considered excessive sweating?
Mm-hmm. So there's really no measure to identify how much sweating is too much. Everyone sweats at a different level. So sweating is a natural process that we should embrace as part of our physiological function. However, if we notice that the sweating has increased from where we used to sweat before, or we start feeling uncomfortable around our sweat, or it's hard to hold things such as a pen or open a doorknob or working on the computer, those might be signs that we are sweating more than our natural amount. And that's when it's important to consider other things that may be contributing, such as medical conditions.
Okay, so at that point is when maybe you should bring it up with your primary care physician.
Exactly.
Okay. Do you have a pit or a puff? There's a lot of conversation about puffy underarms being a sign of poor lymphatic drainage. So what should you do if you notice your underarm looks more like a puff instead of a pit? Speaking from a puff person over here.
So anytime we notice a change in our body, and especially if you are noticing a puff under the armpits, it's important to discuss that with the physician, because there may be some medical causes to what we call lymphedema. Lymphedema is a condition that is when the lymph fluid that is supposed to be transported throughout our body, the load becomes higher than the transporting, and that creates the puff. So whenever one notices a puff, there can be many reasons for that. For example, it could be due to an obstruction, such as cancer. It could be due to trauma in the area. It could be due to damage due to radiation. Could also indicate a sign of an infection.
Okay. What about this concept of doing like at-home lymphatic drainage? So there's things like lymphatic massages that you can do on yourself. Dry brushing is another technique. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on those?
So dry brushing would really be effective mostly for exfoliation and getting rid of dead debris. And that is one thing for exfoliation. However, for any kind of a at-home manual lymphatic massage, I strongly recommend one to talk to their primary care doctor first, because it really should be done by a specialist, like a physical therapy specialist who practices these massages on a daily basis. You want to make sure that you're not doing these massages when there's an active infection going on or a blood clot, because the massages could make that situation worse.
So leave that to the professionals.
Exactly. I also wanted to add, if you start to notice any change in your odor where it becomes more sweet or fruity, or if you notice a bleach odor to your sweat, that might indicate some form of liver disease or kidney disease. So those are some reasons to also contact your primary care doctor.
Okay, so if you start to notice a scent of like bleach or something sweet, something fruity, those are all red flag scents.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, pits, we know, are not the only region that can get pretty stinky. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about whole body deodorant. Mm-hmm. Is it okay to use?
Yes, so whole body deodorants are absolutely okay to use because the concept is the same to apply the deodorant, which is the fragrance and the antibacterial properties they contain, to another part of our body, let's say our feet or other areas that or our groin that may have more smell to them. So whole body deodorants are certainly a good option.
Speaking of feet, heels, flats, sneakers, it doesn't matter. My feet smell after being cooped up. And when I go home and I take my shoes off and my husband and I were sitting on the couch, we both look at each other and we're like, is it you? Is it me? And 9 times out of 10, it's me. So what can I do about it? What are your tips?
Sure. So it's important to recognize that sweat on our feet can accumulate in a very moisturized area. So for example, making sure we're changing our shoes every day. You should not wear the same shoes 2 days in a row because that will allow for aeration to occur.
Oh, that's not good if you have that favorite pair of shoes. I guess I need to buy them in another color.
Right. Yeah. The other thing is to make sure we're changing our socks every day, making sure we're showering every day and getting between our toes. It's also important to pad dry between our toes after the shower because that excessive moisture can accumulate there and create a great environment for bacteria to just thrive. It's also important to maintain a good nail hygiene to make sure our nails are well trimmed because bacteria and fungi love those areas.
Of course they do. How about those foot scrubbers? I don't know if you've seen them before, but like that you can put in the shower and like they really scrub your feet, but they also really tickle too.
Right. Yes, I've tried those. And so the good thing with those is they are mostly exfoliators, so they can help get the dead debris out. So they are a good natural remedy to consider for foot scrubbing.
How about clothing that's made from synthetic materials? How does that affect sweat and odor? I know for me, after I'm done exercising, I immediately am like, need to get out of my athletic clothes because they smell bad. And that dampness, it's just very uncomfortable.
Some materials are better at retaining less of the sweat, for example, cotton and wool, whereas other ones such as nylon or spandex or synthetic fibers tend to emit more odor. They did a study back in 2007 that showed that cotton had a low to medium smelliness factor, whereas other products such as nylon and spandex had a high smelliness factor. So if you're looking to wear something that emits less odor, cotton is the way to go.
Well, that's good because I've actually started switching over some of my biker shorts that I like to use when I go for a run over to cotton because most of them were spandex. And I was like, you know what? I need something that's a little more breathable.
Yeah, that's a great option.
Okay, so to wrap up this episode, what are your best tips for maintaining a healthy armpit microbiome? Since our underarms are their own little environments, sometimes hot and damp, other times dry, how can we keep our pits and all the other areas that sweat in check?
So there's a couple of things I would recommend. One is to make sure we're using a combination antiperspirant and deodorant to keep our armpits dry and fragrant full. The other thing is to make sure that we're not wearing tight-fitted clothing because to allow for proper aeration. The other thing is, if you notice that you are sweating excessively, reach out to your primary care doctor to discuss possible reasons. Make sure that when you are shaving, to change your razor at least every week. Most razors are only good for 7 times. So changing your razors weekly is very important for good hygiene. You can also incorporate probiotics into your diet to help to incorporate a healthy gut and healthy armpit. Last but not least, making sure to shower daily, change your clothes daily, pad dry, and
apply that antiperspirant at night and pop on that deodorant in the morning.
Exactly. You got it.
Dr. Kaushik, we've covered a lot today from sweaty pits to feet and everything in between. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your great tips.
Thank you for having me.
To learn more health tips, visit lvhn.org/healthyyou. Remember to subscribe or follow The Healthiest You wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And remember, be safe, be smart, and be the healthiest you.